My name is Margaret Harper, and the last week of my mother's life was when I learned exactly who my younger sister Danielle Rowan truly was. As the older sister, I was contentedly single. I never found a relationship that demanded less energy than it gave. And frankly, after years of trying to be the emotional anchor for our family, and often for Danielle's, I didn't have much energy left to give. My sister Danielle always had the life she crafted, the perfectly neat brick colonial, the red SUV, and a family that looked like it stepped out of a magazine. She married Mark Rowan, an architect, a decade ago, and they had two beautiful children, twins named Alex and Charlotte. Mark was ambitious and image conscious. He saw Danielle as the perfect partner to complete their success story. For years, I was Aunt Marg, the one who filled the gaps. I spent countless weekends at their house, patiently babysitting when Danielle and Mark had their must attend appointments. I taught the twins how to bake mom's shortbread cookies, and I was the one they ran to for bedtime stories. Danielle never seemed to notice the hours I poured into her life. It was simply expected, another quiet service rendered. The whole time mom was fading, I thought Danielle's distance was a form of denial, a refusal to accept the inevitable. I was wrong. It was preparation. This became sickeningly clear. Not because she shouted, not because she said something cruel. My sister Danielle never needed volume to hurt someone. Her betrayals were quiet, wrapped in softness, carried out with the same gentle hands she used to braid my hair when we were little. I didn't want to believe it then. But grief has a way of forcing your eyes open. Mom had been slipping away for months. Anyone who has sat beside a loved one at the end knows the particular stillness that settles in the room. Hospitals have their own kind of weather, air conditioning humming, monitors blinking like distant stars, the faint smell of disinfectant cutting through everything. I spent every hour I could at her bedside, holding her warm, fragile hand, reading to her from the gardening book she loved so much, brushing back the wisps of silver hair at her temple. Danielle arrived late that morning, breezing in with perfect eyeliner, a delicate scarf, and a pair of soft pink socks she said she thought Mom might like. She kissed Mom lightly on the forehead, barely a touch, and stood back like she didn't want to smudge her makeup. "You look exhausted, Marg," she whispered, always with that tone like she was worried about me, yet somehow never there long enough to help. I nodded, but my eyes stayed on Mom, because I knew we were close. When the doctor gently told me Mom might not make it through the night, everything inside me hollowed out. My knees went soft, my vision blurred. Danielle pressed her manicured fingers to her lips, nodded solemnly, and murmured, "I'll stay for a while." She didn't. She left at 4:30 p.m., checking her phone twice, whispering, "I've got an appointment I simply cannot move." And I stayed all night. I read to Mom until my voice cracked, held water to her lips, smoothed the blanket over her legs, listened to the faint, uneven breaths that told me she was slipping away. Just after 2 in the morning, she squeezed my hand, weak but certain. "My sweet girl," barely a whisper, her last words. She passed before dawn, and a silence filled the room that no sunrise could soften. Danielle swept into the hospital around 8, perfectly groomed, perfectly composed. She placed a soft hand on my shoulder. "Oh, Marg, you should have called me sooner." My throat burned. I didn't trust myself to speak. "I didn't want to interrupt your appointment," I managed. She blinked once slowly. "Well, she's at peace now, that's what matters." Then, with a gentle pat to my arm, she added, "I'll take care of the arrangements, you go rest." It sounded kind, it always did with her. But I didn't understand, not then, that arrangements meant something entirely different inside her head. The funeral was simplicity itself, white chrysanthemums, soft hymns, a quiet chapel that smelled faintly of old wooden pews and rain from the night before. I cried through half the service. Danielle didn't shed a single tear. She dabbed the corner of her eye once with a pristine handkerchief, dry as paper, and kept that graceful composure she was so proud of. She's handling it so well, Aunt Linda whispered. I almost choked on a bitter laugh, but I said nothing. 3 days later, I learned the truth. Mom's safe deposit box was empty, not reduced, not reorganized, emptied. The bank clerk gave me a polite, uneasy smile. Oh, your sister said she had your authorization. My authorization? My voice came out thin. Yes, ma'am, she presented a notarized document your mother signed in August. August, the month Mom's handwriting had begun to wobble, the month she could barely lift a pen. I stared at the clerk, feeling the floor tilt. Can I see the signature? I'm sorry, only the authorized party can access those files. Authorized party, just one, Danielle. My chest went hollow. Inside that box were Mom's wedding ring, her mother's brooch, old stock certificates, family documents, and the original will. Gone. All of it taken the morning after the funeral. While I was still waking up from the shock of losing Mom, Danielle was already at the bank. Quiet, swift, prepared. That night I lay awake listening to every small sound in my house. The refrigerator hum, the clock ticking, the wind brushing against the windows. All of it felt too loud. And I kept remembering the day Mom asked, Margaret, do you know where your sister put those papers? They were on my dresser, now they're missing. I had asked Danielle back then. Oh, those, I just moved them while vacuuming. I believed her. I shouldn't have. 2 days later, the estate attorney called. Margaret, your sister has requested a meeting to review the will. She asked that you attend. My stomach tightened. Is the will intact? A long, heavy pause. That is one of the topics we'll review. And with that, the truth settled over me like a winter draft. My sister hadn't been grieving. She'd been preparing all along. I didn't sleep that night. Every time I shut my eyes, I saw my mother's handwriting. Those soft loops, those gentle curls. Sitting inside a folder my sister was willing to commit a felony to hide from me. So by sunrise, I was already fully dressed, standing barefoot in my kitchen, cupping a mug of coffee that tasted more like worry than anything else. There was a damp chill in the air, that early Midwest kind that sneaks up your sleeves and makes your bones ache. Outside, the sky glowed a pale lavender, the kind that promises a storm later. My phone buzzed, a text from Danielle. Don't come by today, the lawyer doesn't need you there. Not it's handled. Not I'll fill you in. Just don't come. I read it twice because the audacity didn't register the first time. My heart thudded, not fast, but heavy. Heavy the way it does when you know someone's shaping a narrative you're not allowed to hear. I typed back slowly, one finger tapping the counter. I'll be there at 10. I didn't wait for her response. I set the phone face down and took a deep breath through my nose, catching the faint smell of the cinnamon candle I'd burned last night. Mom had loved cinnamon, said it made a home feel like it remembered you. By 9:15, I was in the car, the engine warming under a low gray sky that looked like someone had stretched a wool blanket over the whole town. Every streetlight reflected off the slick pavement. A few oak leaves slapped against the windshield, wet and gold. As I drove, memories drifted in like fog. Mom brushing my hair after school, humming Patsy Cline the way her hands trembled the last year, but she still tried to fold laundry the way she whispered, "Don't let her steamroll you, baby," when she thought I was asleep. Steamroll. That word sat in my chest like a rock. When I reached the law office, one of those converted houses turned professional spaces, Danielle's red SUV was already parked crooked, like she'd arrived in a storm of her own making. Inside, the waiting room smelled like lemon cleaner and old carpet. A water cooler bubbled in the corner. I rubbed my palms against my jeans. The receptionist barely looked up before saying, "She's in the conference room." Of course she was. When I walked in, my sister's face went stiff the way it always did right before she told a lie she hoped I'd swallow whole. "Why are you here?" she demanded, pushing her hair behind her ear in that irritated flick she'd done since she was 16. "I told you," I said evenly, "I'm part of this." She snorted. "Well, you're about to make things very difficult, but fine. Sit." Her hand was covering a document titled Estate Transfer Authorization. and I knew instantly she'd signed something she had no right to sign. The lawyer, a thin man with silver glasses and a voice like dry toast, cleared his throat. Ladies, I think we should all remain calm. Danielle leaned forward. Just read her the summary so we can get this over with. I sat down slowly, feeling the vinyl chair groan under me. He began. As executor, I blinked. With respect, sir, that role was never discussed. Danielle spoke before he could. Mom asked me, you were too emotional, you always are. My sister said, Mom asked me with the confidence of someone who never believed I'd dare challenge her. The lawyer continued reading, but my ears were buzzing. He listed bank accounts, property rights, distribution clauses. All of it carefully arranged, all of it already approved by my sister's signature. And, he concluded, flipping the page, the full remaining liquid assets will be transferred into Ms. Danielle Rowan's sole account for timely management. Liquid assets? I repeated, the words scraping out of my throat. Danielle waved her hand. It's procedural, don't make this dramatic. Procedural meant she'd already drained it. I saw it in her eyes. She demoved the money before Mom was even cold in the ground. My vision pulsed. The lemon cleaner in the room suddenly smelled too sharp. Where's Mom's real will? I asked quietly. Danielle stiffened. That is the real one. No, I said. I mean the handwritten one, the one you hid. The lawyer's eyes flicked to her. Handwritten will? She stared at me with a hatred that nearly hummed. There is no handwritten will, she said flatly. She lied so easily she didn't even blink. I reached into my purse and placed the copied pages I'd taken photos of on the table, not the originals, but enough to make the lawyer sit up straighter. Danielle's face drained of color. What, where did you get that? You left your safe open, I said. Or maybe you thought I was too stupid to notice the missing weight in the file. Hard to say. The lawyer adjusted his glasses, scanning the page. This overrides quite a few items, he murmured. Danielle slammed her palm down. Those are old. They're not legally binding. Mom dated them. I pointed to the corner. That would make them relevant. For the first time, my sister looked scared, not angry, not smug, actually scared. She shot up from her chair. We're done here, she snapped. Don't move a muscle until I get back. And she stormed out, the conference room door rattling behind her. The lawyer looked at me over his glasses. This is irregular, he said carefully. I'll need to look into the validity. Please do, I replied. Because she took everything, and my mother trusted me to protect her wishes. After I stepped out of the office, the air felt thick, already heavy with the storm rolling in. I stopped by my car, placing my hand on the cold door handle, and took one long breath, letting the truth settle like silt in water. My sister wasn't just hiding money. She was hiding what my mother wanted me to know all along. Rain began to fall, slow, fat drops hitting the pavement like steady drumming. And in that gray, trembling morning, I made myself one silent promise. I will not let her win. Not with lies, not with money, not with Mom's memory, not this time. The next 2 days were endless, stretched out like chewing on coarse rope. I spent them going over the documents, rereading Mom's handwriting, memorizing the soft loops of her letters, the way she had always signed her name with care. Every line was a reminder. Mom had trusted me. And Danielle had betrayed that trust. By the second morning, I knew it was time. Time to face her. Time to stop pretending that hiding in the shadows would protect me. I drove to her house, a neat brick colonial with hydrangeas still clinging to the front yard despite the autumn chill. The wind rattled the leaves on the branches, carrying that damp, earthy smell that makes the throat catch. My hands gripped the steering wheel like it was a lifeline. I pressed the doorbell. She answered with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "Oh, you're here early," Danielle said, her tone light, but her eyes were sharp, calculating. She wore a cream blouse with a silk scarf, the kind of outfit that whispers control. "I need to see you," I said, stepping inside. "About what?" "Mom's estate, the money, the will you hid from me." Her face went white, then pink, then cold again. She gestured for me to sit in the living room where the smell of fresh baked cookies, too sweet, too cloying, filled the air. You don't understand, she said, trying to smooth her scarf, her fingers trembling slightly. I was only trying to manage things. Manage? You stole everything, Danielle, every penny. You lied about Mom's wishes. You thought you could erase her trust in me. Her eyes flicked to the window. Outside, a few birds hopped along the wet grass, pecking at fallen seeds. Inside, the quiet throbbed between us. I thought you couldn't handle it, she whispered, her voice small now vulnerable. Vulnerability. She had never been vulnerable in front of me. Never, and yet here she was, trembling because the truth was finally catching up. I could handle it, I said softly, leaning forward. Mom trusted me, that's what matters, not you, not the money, not the paperwork you forged. Her hands twisted in her lap. She opened her mouth, closed it, then finally said, I didn't mean to hurt her. I wanted to feel needed. I wanted to feel important. It was the first time I saw the raw, human fear behind her greed. Not justification, just fear. I took a slow breath. The smell of the cookies, the faint musk of her perfume, the soft ticking of the clock, all of it anchored me. You can still make this right, I said. Mom wouldn't want you to end up hating yourself over her estate. You need to give it back. Every account, every check, every document. She laughed nervously. Give it back. You don't understand. It's all gone. I can't just. You can, I interrupted firmly. Because if you don't, the law will. And Danielle, the law is not a forgiving thing when you've stolen from your own family. Her face went pale again. The first real fear I had seen, not fake bravado, not anger, fear. I pulled out my phone, showing her pictures of Mom's handwritten will. This is what you tried to hide. The dates, the signatures, everything. The moment this goes to court, every lie you've told will crumble. Every attempt to keep what isn't yours will be exposed. She looked at the photos, her lips parting like she might scream, but nothing came out, only silence. Silence heavier than any argument, the weight of truth filling the room like a storm cloud. I don't want it to go that far, I said, voice calm but firm. You have a choice, Danielle. Make it right before the lawyers get involved. She sank back into the sofa, burying her face in her hands. Her scarf fell over the edge of the cushion, brushing against the worn fabric like she was shrinking into herself. I didn't think you'd fight, she murmured. Fight, I echoed. I've been fighting since Mom got sick. I've been fighting since you decided I wasn't worthy. I've been fighting every day while you pretended to care. I realized then this wasn't just about the estate. It was about respect. It was about being seen for who I was, even in my grief. She looked up, tear tracks staining her cheeks. The fire in my chest dimmed slightly, replaced by a strange calm. Do the right thing, Danielle. Not for me, not for Mom, for yourself, and don't make me file the papers I've prepared. Her hands trembled. I could see her mind racing. The quiet house seemed to hold its breath. The morning air was crisp, biting slightly through the car windows as I drove toward the courthouse. Every street felt unfamiliar, though I had passed them 1,000 times before. My stomach churned with a mix of dread and determination, and I gripped the steering wheel until my knuckles turned white. Mom's will rested safely in a fireproof folder on the passenger seat beside me. I traced the edge of it with my finger, imagining her handwriting guiding me, protecting me. Each line on the page was a promise, a tether to the truth that no one, not even Danielle, could erase. I parked and stepped out, the wind whipping leaves against my coat. The courthouse loomed ahead like a stone sentinel, gray and solemn, indifferent to the small human dramas unfolding within. I took a deep breath, tasting the sharp tang of wet asphalt and rain on my lips. Inside, the fluorescent lights hummed overhead, a steady white noise that made my pulse feel loud in my ears. Danielle was already there, seated with her arms folded, her expression carefully neutral but betraying the tiniest flicker of anxiety. Her lawyer sat beside her, shuffling papers as if the rustle alone could intimidate me. This was it. Every lie, every betrayal, every stolen moment was about to collide with reality. The judge entered, her presence commanding without a word. Silver hair pinned neatly, eyes sharp, voice steady. She surveyed the room, the weight of her gaze settling over us like a blanket. "Ms. Harper," she began, turning to me, "I understand this matter involves a newly discovered will and allegations of misappropriation of assets. Please present your case." I stepped forward, hands steady despite the storm in my chest. I laid the folder carefully on the table. The soft leather made a quiet thunk as it touched the surface. Every second felt magnified, stretched, as if the room itself held its breath. "This will," I said, voice clear, "represents my mother's true intentions. Not the document Danielle tried to use to mislead me, to control me, to take what was never hers." The judge opened the folder, flipping through the pages, her brow knitting as she examined Mom's neat handwriting. Danielle's eyes darted toward me, a shadow of fear passing across her features. For the first time, I saw her doubt, not just of the situation, but of herself. My lawyer spoke next, calm and authoritative. "Your Honor, we have notarized witness statements, bank records, and correspondence that verify the authenticity of this document. It supersedes any previous will. Danielle Rowan has withheld assets and misrepresented her sister's intent." Danielle's face went pale, her fingers clenching the edge of her chair. "Your Honor," she stammered, "it wasn't like that." The judge raised a hand. "Ms. Rowan, you will have your turn. Please refrain from interrupting." The courtroom seemed to shrink, the air heavier, every breath measured, every heartbeat echoing in my chest. She tried to speak again, her voice rising. "I only—" "No," I said softly but firmly, leaning forward just enough. "You only thought you could take what wasn't yours, but Mom made her intentions clear, and now the truth will be upheld." The judge continued reviewing the evidence. Bank statements, letters, the notarized will, each page a hammer striking at the fragile construct Danielle had built. The reality of what she had done sank in, and for the first time, I saw the fear in her eyes, not the faux composure she always wore, but the pure human panic of someone cornered by the truth. After what felt like hours but was only minutes, the judge spoke. Her voice calm, unwavering. "Based on the evidence presented, the newly discovered will is deemed valid. It clearly represents the decedent's intent. Ms. Harper is entitled to all assets as outlined. Any previous claims or filings to the contrary are dismissed." The room seemed to exhale all at once. Danielle slumped in her chair, her carefully constructed armor shattered. My lawyer gave me a small, reassuring nod, but I barely noticed. I was too busy letting the truth wash over me, the sense of justice, of balance, of Mom's voice guiding me through the storm. It wasn't just about money. It was about respect. It was about love, trust, and standing firm even when those you thought closest to you tried to break you. The judge added, addressing Danielle Rowan directly, "Attempts to manipulate or misappropriate assets from family members will not be tolerated. Further complaints or legal maneuvers without merit will be referred for further investigation." Danielle's lawyer whispered something, but she didn't even look at him. Her shoulders sagged, her carefully maintained facade gone. Danielle Rowan left the courthouse that day in a daze, her lawyer steering her toward the exit like a ship without a rudder. The full weight of the ruling hit her immediately. The court ordered the immediate freeze and eventual transfer of all misappropriated liquid assets back to the estate, forcing her to repay funds she had already mentally spent. The local paper, usually reserved for town council news, ran a brief article about the disputed estate, referencing allegations of forgery and breach of fiduciary duty. Mark, Danielle's husband, was obsessed with their public image and furious over the financial exposure and the very loud scandal this quiet betrayal had created. He valued status and stability above all else, and Danielle's deceit had jeopardized both his career and his meticulously crafted life. He didn't divorce her for morality. He divorced her for the ruin of his perfect life and the risk to his professional reputation. Mark served her with divorce papers a week later, citing reckless financial behavior and the toxic environment created by her deceit. She had to face losing not just the money she craved, but the perfect life she had so carefully constructed. The quiet, graceful betrayal she practiced had finally culminated in a very loud public reckoning. I walked out of the courthouse slowly, feeling the cool breeze on my face. Rain had cleared, leaving a clean, almost sweet scent in the air. My steps felt lighter, the weight of anxiety replaced by something stronger, resolve. I had faced the storm. I had stood in the heart of confrontation, and I had survived with dignity intact. Later, standing on the courthouse steps, I watched Danielle disappear down the street. I didn't feel anger. I felt clarity. I felt the quiet satisfaction that comes not from revenge, but from knowing truth and justice had been honored. This wasn't just a legal victory, it was a reclaiming of my life, my agency, my voice. As I walked to my car, Mom's handwriting seemed to whisper in my memory, "Keep what's yours, stand firm, do not let them diminish your worth." And I had. The drive home was quiet, the kind of quiet that feels full instead of empty. I rolled the windows down just a crack, letting the cool air brush against my cheeks. Leaves rustled along the curbside, a soft reminder that life kept moving, that the world didn't stop for anyone, not for greed, not for betrayal. As I approached my street, I noticed the little things I had taken for granted, the way the morning sun touched the roof shingles, the smell of freshly cut grass lingering faintly from yesterday. It was as though the world itself was welcoming me back, whispering, "You belong here." Inside, the house was exactly as I had left it, neatly arranged, untouched. Danielle had not dared enter, and even the thought of it made me shiver. I could feel her absence in every corner, in every room, a silent testament to the truth that had just been upheld. I unpacked Mom's folder, carefully laying each paper on my desk. Every signature, every line of handwriting reminded me that justice wasn't always instantaneous. Sometimes it required patience, vigilance, and courage to act when the time was right. I paused, tracing the letters on her notes, letting the memory of her hand guide me. I could almost hear her voice. "Stand firm, my child. Do not let anyone convince you otherwise." The real inheritance wasn't just money or land, it was the clarity and confidence to trust in yourself when others tried to shake you. The next few days were a quiet reconstruction. Friends who had stayed in the background came forward, offering support. Letters of congratulations arrived, subtle acknowledgments that the battle had been observed, that I had not walked alone. Each kind word, each small gesture reminded me that family is not always the people who share your blood. It is those who choose to stand by you. I spent time in my kitchen, preparing meals I had long neglected, savoring the scent of bread baking and tea steeping. The small, ordinary rituals felt extraordinary after the storm I had weathered. Danielle was a shadow in the distance now, powerless to reach me. The quiet moments, often overlooked, were now my sanctuary, proof that resilience is nurtured in stillness as much as in confrontation. I revisited the fields that had once felt like mine only in theory. Walking through the tall grass, the wind tangling in my hair, I felt an unfamiliar yet deeply comforting sense of belonging. This land, these acres, carried the weight of generations, of stories whispered through time, and now I was the keeper of that legacy. Every step I took across the soil felt like reclaiming more than just property. It was a reclaiming of dignity, identity, and history. The next morning, I found myself reflecting on Danielle, on the choices she had made, on the desperation that had driven her. I did not feel triumph in her downfall. I felt clarity in the preservation of truth. I understood that people will often act from their fears and envies, but it is in steadfastness that one finds peace. I realized that standing firm was never about defeating someone else. It was about honoring what is right and just, even when the path is lonely. I arranged the home as if preparing for guests I might never receive. Each photograph, each memento, each careful placement was an affirmation that my world was intact, untouchable by the shadow of deceit. Sometimes the hardest battles are not the ones others can see. They're fought in quiet rooms, in whispered fears, in moments when no one is watching except yourself. And that's the truth I hope you carry with you. Standing up for yourself doesn't always look dramatic. It doesn't always come with applause. But the courage to say, I will not be silenced, I will not be diminished, is the kind that reshapes everything. So tell me, have you ever faced someone trying to take what was yours right under your nose? Or been underestimated when you knew your own strength? Share it below. Let's remind each other that strength can be quiet and justice, even when delayed, can arrive. And if you want another story that proves resilience always matters, you know where to come.